So, how are you doing, guys? Welcome to Dev Diary episode 17 for the 19th of August 2018. So, a lot to get through today, but first we're going to start off talking about how we got on with the demo at Dublin Comic Com. So guys, let's take a quick look at the build that we brought to Dublin Comic Com. So as you can probably see, some of the menus got an overhaul. We've cleaned up the about section, the credits section, and kind of the quitting and things like that. But we'll just hit play demo. And you should hear some voice acting from Donald DeBarra doing the narrative. Cool, guys.
Eirik Mavoshta. The darkness grows. It has sensed your presence. It was no storm, but destiny that delivered you to these shores. Wake up, Niev. It's time to set things right again.
So here we are in the demo level. And if we walk forward, we enter a trigger box that tells us to unlock our abilities from a magic stone up here in the forest. So once we approach the stone, we get our interact dialogue. Proceed to interact, and we've unlocked our magic abilities. Again, this is something I just did for the demo. These AIs are very dumb. They use behavior trees, but they're still not great. But anyways, we're not going to bother with the enemies there. I'm going to nip down here and show you some of the new UI elements that are in for the fast travel map. So as you can see, we've reworked the map graphics. It now highlights green to tell us which current area we're in. So I'm just going to quickly fast travel. So as you can see, our time of day has changed. We go back up to our stone, interact. For now we're just going to travel back to Perchine. But you can see that the area has changed. It's currently highlighting Cluckbuy, Yellowstone. So we'll travel back to Perchine. So now it's night time and we're back in the village. But that's the basics of the build that we brought to Dublin Comic Com. So again, my pause menu, we have some new graphics in there. And rather than restart or zoom, I'm just going to quit out to the main menu. As a lot of you guys may know from previous episodes, we had a big push on, a lot of crunch time to try and get everything ready for Dublin Comic Com. And it went very well. There was a couple of bugs that I spotted during playtesting and during people calling over to the stand and playing the game, but that was kind of to be expected. Even some of the kind of mechanics and functionality wasn't in there, so it was just kind of a push to get the game out there and let people have the first kind of look at how everything was going with it. So with that said, I think it went really well. The next push is for the Dublin Games Festival in November. That's a one-day event on the Saturday, the 24th of November, in the RDS main hall. So hopefully in the somewhat 96 days between now and then, the project will have come along a lot way, and hopefully if there's anyone that did play the game at Dublin Comic Con and comes along to the Dublin Games Festival, they'll notice the differences and kind of see where the project, have a better idea of the project's direction. So with that said, I'll talk a little about some of the stuff that I kind of noticed during playtesting at the Comic Con. First major thing I noticed is how most players, modern players, and I've noticed this on other projects, prefer to use gamepads rather than keyboard and mouse. I think the hardcore strategy gamers on PCs still prefer keyboards, and of course our first-person shooters, a lot of people still prefer keyboards. MMOs, again, keyboards, but I think for action-adventure games, such as the category this one falls into, people really do want control pad support. Now, from day zero, I have always kind of had the inputs enabled for controller support, but I made the decision going up to Dublin Comic Con that I wouldn't implement the controller support for that build, considering that the controllers weren't really working great in the menus. So I have a bit of work to do to get in-menu controller support. The menus themselves got a huge overhaul, and I'll show you a bit of that shortly. Since Dublin Comic Con, I've kind of been going around cleaning up a lot of the stuff that I had just kind of done just to get us over the line, so we had something a bit more playable for the convention. So I've done a little bit of cleanup on the project, and we may as well jump in and have a look. So I'm going to full screen this. Alt and P, nice shortcut to play in your current window. So you can see there's not too much difference, but automatically, to unlock your magic abilities, explore the stone circle in the woods. So this was basically the setup I had for Dublin Comic Con. Now you may notice I have my magic unlocked here. That wasn't the case for Dublin Comic Con, but I've done a bit of a clean-up since. So the idea was to get the players to come over here and interact with the stone. And we have some dumb AI. Now you may notice that I've added in an effect since many of you have last seen it, and indeed it wasn't there for the con, but it's in now. But it's basically these little sprites that come up. There's one for each element, so it's just a little effect that I had planned to put in there but just didn't have the time. So yeah, you could see that was the basic idea for Comic-Con, was just to have the rudimentary kind of gameplay in there. Unfortunately my shields didn't work. You can see shields don't affect this guy, which is a bit of a pain, but yeah, we can kill them. And that was the basic idea. I'm also going to fly over here. Oh, there you go. So you can see it there. As we get close, you can see this material pops up just to tell the player that they can't really go outside that area, that we've only really focused inside this area for the build. Which again, I'll probably hold on to that material, but I'll get rid of the actual volume that is there moving forward as we kind of move towards the next demo. Again, I'm going to focus mainly on this area for the next couple of weeks, the village area, just to finish it off and get it over the line. I'd also like to try out some sub-level streaming, and by that I mean if I go over here and I go to my levels tab and I load in perching, so you can see we have our rocks over here, we have our houses, our boats, and kind of all the detail of the level. I'll click it on and off so you can kind of see. So yeah, you can see most of the detailed stuff is coming in in this sub-level map A001. The idea being that A001 we'd also have A002, and in our level details and our world composition settings, we can set streaming distances. So let's say we're here, we're within eye shot of the village. We see this map A001. So then as we get close to the house, like if I'm here around this area, there's no point in any of the internal furniture or set dressings inside the house being loaded until I get within somewhere where I can actually, even poke in the windows. So I'll set the streaming distances so that only once we're by the house do we load in the details for the house, and that way we can have a lot more control over memory and kind of optimization and things like that. That's actually one of the goals for the next near future, is to make it so that I have all my set dressings in the house and they're streaming in a separate level. And the same will be for all buildings. So each building may have a little level. You can see a whole fire zone box. I'll just select it there over the building. So that if you think about it in those terms, it won't actually have a physical volume, but it will have a streaming distance. If you imagine a box that maybe is a bit larger than that, I won't scale it now, but you get the idea. It's something, in and around here that would happen. Another thing I noticed is, because again it was a quick build, I told them to unlock their magic abilities by visiting the stone circle. A lot of people travel to the fast travel stone, and again I'd like to get bespoke fast travel stones. So rather than have this generic stone at each point, what I plan on doing is to remove that asset from this actual object or blueprint, and have a unique set dressing in each area. So as you can see, outside just the level loading aspects that I want to kind of work into in the next short while into the game, I'm also going to redo the combat system. It was kind of thrown together for Comic Con, being that we have our primary attack and then kind of a defensive variation. A lot of the shields look quite similar, just because with limited time to work on them, some aspects of the shields just didn't really work great. So I want to do some more work on them. But other than just the actual graphical effects, I want to overhaul the combat system and make it a bit more intuitive and fun to engage with. It's hard to actually measure how good or bad it is right now, considering our AI is for the enemies is in such an early stage of development. So along with redoing the combat system, I'm going to do the AI to balance towards the combat system at the same time. So they're kind of the most immediate changes that I'm going to be working on. So if we think about the game overall, we have a combat system and the basics of kind of how we're going to approach our level design, and even that'll inform how we do our quest and mission layout. But I'll just exit out of the runtime there. But just to kind of talk briefly about some of the other mechanics that weren't really implemented at the time when I wanted to show the game off, and that I kind of plan to work on in the next following weeks as well. So a game mechanic that we is kind of hinted in the name, Hidden in Time, that I've kind of been thinking about and kind of in a way to mix up gameplay, so that it's not all combat. So to drive kind of the story and the more exploration elements of the game forward, I came up with a system that allows the player to kind of peer back in time. So to reveal different parts of the plot and different kind of quest items and kind of more discovery. Now, in a way, it's hard. I found it hard to do it without it looking a lot like let's say, the kind of Witcher senses out of The Witcher 3, or leaning a bit too much towards the kind of time paradox and kind of rollback that we see in games like Prince of Persia or other games that have kind of messed with time. I wanted it to be more of a kind of a Ghost Hunter experience. So Fatal Frame, things like that, where you're actually using this as a device to discover the storyline and the plot, and to kind of move the ball forward in that regard. So with that in mind, I went into my test project. So I'll full screen this. So again, I'll talk you through maybe later in the video exactly how I achieved this, but it's actually not that hard really. But I'll just play an editor here. So in this project, this is where I test everything out before it goes into the actual main build. So it's just a basic first-person shooter template in here. This is the default level. And you may notice in the top left-hand corner I have a progress bar. Basically that bar is hooked up to the sense. So the idea being that I get like an audio, it's just the random starter content fire that I've down pitched on that. I get a bloom effect and some camera effects going on, and I'm doing a bit of color grading, but you can see that the bar goes down, and once we let off it comes back again. But if I were to sense here, you may notice that now I see this object that wasn't visible before when I'm in my normal view. And the idea being here is that, you know, if we're getting cues to use certain elements to open up certain doors, they'll be available only when we're sensing like this. I haven't come up with a name for it yet, but I'm calling it visioning mode at the moment. So that's what it's named in the code and that. So visioning. So that's just a very basic example of how it works. But there's a lot more work to be done with it before I actually commit to putting it into the game. Just to speak slightly technical about it right now, if I open up, I think it is the Visioning Mesh Blueprint. So this is Vision Mesh Blueprint, which is basically kind of an idea of how I would do it. So we have our visibility for the actual mesh that has that fading material on it. We have that by default set to visibility to off. But if I go into the event graph, you can see that at the moment it's using event tick. Now, as a lot of you guys may know, event tick is not really something that we should use all that often. Because if it's event tick, it's been calculated a couple of thousand times a second, I believe. I could be wrong with that and the actual and how many times per second it's been calculated, but it's too much. We have that is visioning a boolean, and we have that just true and false, hide and show the cube, depending on what's happening here in the first person character. So over in the first person character, it looks kind of convoluted, but if we press E, our can we vision is, if that's true, then we branch off, we set the is visioning, which is called in the other script. We change the max walk speed, we adjust the audio classes, so the regular audio class of environmentals like the birds chirping, the wind and all that will kind of get affected there. For now I'm not doing much with that, and we're playing a sound 2D, so that's the actual fire cue from the starter content from Unreal, from Epic Games. And then on release, what we do is we revert back our booleans to their and set our walk speed back to what it used to be. We adjust our sound classes and fade out the sound. What you may notice again here for the visioning and the progress bar, we're using another event tick. So that's two event ticks, which can be very expensive. So what I'm actually going to use custom timers for these. So even though the custom timers are a lot more complex to look at in a hypergraph form, they're cheaper. than use an event tick. We want to kind of minimize the amount of event ticks we're using. We already, this is only a test project, I already have an event tick in my character controller in the actual untill project, so I don't want to, I'm going to try and not add a whole lot more to the event tick, only if completely necessary, because for everything we add to the event tick, and it's kind of unavoidable once your event tick gets kind of complex, you end up with using these sequence nodes. That's all CPU time that is just really not that healthy overall for the kind of resource management of the game. You may also notice that I'm using integers. Integers are fine, but rather than use integers, the final solution for doing the progress bar on that will be using floats. Again, rather than having one int, it'll be 3 floats. So, where the real resource saving is not using this event tick. It's a bit harsh. So that's basically what's going on in there. The HUD itself, I mean, there's not much to it in this kind of demo project. It's in the graph, we're just, we're getting a reference to our character, getting the vision current integer, dividing that by a float of 100, so we can then represent that in our graphic here, our bar. All of this is default stuff. I haven't done anything kind of crazy there. The material, the fading material. So basically, I'm only really using an emissive and an opacity on a translucent blend mode material. My color orange here, you can see the RGB value of it there, is being multiplied by 4, which has a nice glow effect in the emissive. What we're doing then is we're getting pixel depth information. We're dividing it by 0.8. We're plugging in that into a sphere mask, and operand A is the product of this, and B is the product of that. And then we're clamping our value, which is our opacity value, to a maximum value of between 0 and 0.25. So that gives us control over how opaque the max opacity is. Now I can drive a custom opacity mask into this, and that's probably what I will be doing over in the actual project. So I'll just show you really quickly again the actual effect. It's quite basic for now, but the functionality is there. Once I get everything a bit more optimized and working in this test project, I'll start implementing the same system in our game. Just briefly, so I'm going to go back over to our other project here. So just briefly here, if I hit play here, give it a second now, and hit play. Obviously, if we're using our vision ability, we won't be able to cast magic or kind of do other stuff like that, We'll keep it kind of simple. Now, whether I have that running on the stamina bar, the one that's filling up blue there, or if I create another UI element for the actual visioning system, we'll see. But the idea being that, you can see that as we walk up to this rock, we get our nice glow effect. That I could put hints and other things around the level that would only appear once you're in that visioning system. Other things like that the player might find handy is like when we interact with this, we get an interact symbol when we get close, but you could get hints and kind of other visual cues using the visioning system to kind of let you know that before you get close enough to get your interact symbol that this is actually something worth checking out. Again, it's going to be a bit of a challenge to do it in a way that it doesn't seem like you're completely plagiarizing other systems or other systems other players would have kind of seen in the past. But it's going to be a big addition to the project, and mainly I can see it being used to kind of drive the story and the plot narrative forward in the game. So hopefully in the next episode I should have something that resembles a visioning system in the actual main project. Another thing I noticed when I ran my frame checks on the actual test rig. So I have my workstation computer that I use for actually development, but then I deploy the actual builds on a test machine that's not as powerful as my workstation here. It's still a pretty good gaming PC and quite suitable for bringing to exhibitions and events, but it's nowhere near as powerful as my my workstation. So it's good. It serves as a good machine for kind of as a test bed. One thing I did notice is at times I was getting frame rate drops. Optimization has to be something that in the project goes on constantly. It's not something that you kind of do things and then optimize later. I think optimization, maybe it's just a personal thing, but I believe that optimization should be carried out throughout the entirety of the project, so it doesn't become an issue when retargeting your game to different platforms. So what I did notice was that my grass instances here, my foliage type in the auto terrain material, are kind of resource hungry. It's fine on you can kind of see that if I go up into the sky here, you can see towards the edges there, it's especially obvious here, that we're drawing a heck of a lot of grass. So I'm going to have to address that. It's not a big thing, but it just means that we're going to have to really optimize the heck out of the place before we kind of proceed. So I'd imagine that that will be number one priority moving forward and kind of proceeding with the project, is to kind of revisit some of the grass there and really start culling. I like the density, but I'm not happy with the actual the draw distance. I mean, there's no need for all this grass over here to be drawn. Another kind of part of the routine is every Friday. I didn't do one this Friday now because I've been working on the test project a lot this weekend, or this week rather. One of the things we're going to start doing is doing the test build on the Friday, packaging the game in our 64-bit pipeline, and then taking it straight to the test rig and testing it on that. Because not only do we want to maintain the pipeline now, we want to maintain the optimization elements of the game. We've got 3 months before the Dublin Games Festival, which I'm hoping is kind of where we're going to have our big reveal to the public of a lot of kind of changes to the game and things like that. I had hoped to go to the Galway Games Gathering this year. I'm not sure if it's on. I've reached out and tried to contact a few people to see what's going on, but I don't know if it's on or not. So with that in mind, our next big target is the 24th of November and the RDS and the Dublin Games Festival, and to really have a killer demo ready for the show. So my plans are going to kind of revolve around this next 3-month period. So guys, that's been Dev Diary episode 17 for the 19th of August 2018. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll chat to you all again.